Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to episode 73 of Into the Necrosphere. My guest today is Mikael of the mighty Vredensdal. I know that I've been talking about getting that conversation sorted out for a while now. We had various scheduling issues that threw a spanner in the works, but it finally happened. It's very entertaining. It's going to be coming your way very shortly, but first up, it is time for another demo of the week, and this one comes to us by way of Kyle Mitchell, a long-time Into the Necrosphere fan and an absolute badass. The band is called Perilaxe Occlusion. They're from Ontario, Canada. They put out a demo in December of last year called Exponential Decay. There is apparently another demo in the works and on the way for later this year. But the best way that I can describe these guys is doom-tinged death metal with grooves so heavy that it will do structural damage to your house if you play this loudly enough. So if you live on a second or third floor apartment and you hate your neighbors and you've got a subwoofer, turn this up loud. This is a track called Death Bias Alpha. Death Bias Alpha by Perilaxe Occlusion off of a record called Exponential Decay. Absolutely brilliant. My demo of the week, and it is available right now on Bandcamp for you to go and buy. So show those guys some love and support. Buy a t-shirt, buy some music. And when they ask you who sent you, then let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere. Likewise, if you're in a band and you want to send me your finest new recording and you're unsigned, then drop me a line at intothenecrosphere@gmail.com or follow the show and send me a message on Twitter at iNecrosphere or Instagram and Facebook at Into the Necrosphere. And if I like what I hear, I'll feature it on the show. And if I really like what I hear, who knows, you might get to join the pantheon of incredible guests who have graced Mean Street Studios, including Aaron Stainthorpe of My Dying Bride, who was on last week. I said it at the time, I will still say it, one of my favorite episodes I've ever recorded, and judging by the response that I had from all of you, you seem to agree. So thank you very much to everybody who dropped me a line and let me know how much they enjoyed that. Got some great guests coming up in the next couple of weeks, actually. So next week will be Jesse Mathewson of Ken Mode. The week after, I've got Kelly T of Kelly T Black Metal Reviews coming back. And the week after, I've got the Chaps from Ageless Oblivion, a death metal band in the UK, recently signed to Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records. They have got a fucking badass album coming out that I think you guys are going to enjoy, and I am very much looking forward to recording that episode. So all of that is coming your way soon. Also, later on in this show, I will be talking about the new Wode album, which many of you are calling your favorite record of the year so far. If you've not heard it yet, then stick around. In about an hour's time, you may find out why. But first, let us welcome to Mean Street Studios for the first time ever, Mikael of Vredensdal. We should get one of those. We should get one of those voice changes. Like when they interview some whistleblower at some government agency or something, and it's like, the voice is like really deep and muffled. And
I am a representation of what is known as the Goblin, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like when I don't know whether you've seen it actually, the classic Deerside interview with Glenn Benton on this really bullshit documentary called Dancing with the Devil. That the BBC did, and they ask him this question, and he's staring really wide-eyed and like, do you believe in demonic possession? And he's like, of course. Like, are you possessed? Of course.
Of course I am. I'd love to answer that interview.
Oh, dude, it's fucking brilliant. It's hysterical. It was shown to me as a means to steer me away from satanic metal music, but it just turned me on to Deerside. And I remember watching a clip they had on there of Sacrificial Suicide until the tape was stretched and gnarled. My dad showed it to somebody once, and it gets to the point right before this begins, and he's like, Jackie, why is the tape doing this? It's like, I don't know. I've not watched it since. I must have watched the clip because it's just the bridge that they have, the damn to hell. They just I must have watched that bit fucking 100, 200 times easily. That's
awesome.
But I think that's how most people get turned onto metal. Their parents warn them against it, and then they go, "Shit, man, I want to give this a go."
I got an interesting story about that. Are we going? Can I get rid of this thing now?
You can go for it, buddy.
Cool. All right, so this is the big reveal, because not so many people have seen the man behind the mask.
I've seen the true face of evil.
Look at it, hideous grotesqueness. No, funny story. Satan is present or whatever. But anyway, similar thing happened to me when I was a kid. My parents and family in general are very strict and religious Christians, very strongly, to the point where I don't have a very good, we're not really on a good speaking place, right? Does that make sense? So when I was a kid, certain things that I couldn't do, certain things I couldn't be a part of. I wasn't allowed to celebrate Halloween. Actually, for a good amount of time, a couple years in a row, they made me watch this video that was why Halloween is satanic, and how it's like weed is the gateway drug. It's gonna lead you to crystal meth, right?
Yeah,
pretty much. And So I had to watch that a couple years in a row, and of course they had this, on the video. If you go trick or treating, this is what it means, um, and they had an interview with a former Satanist and all this stuff, and the guy was like this mopey. I remember the time when I was, this and that, and it's just ridiculous.
It was always, those stories were always the same. I went to a party and they offered me some marijuana, and then when I was high, they filmed all these rituals and told me they're going to show my parents.
Now I'm a whore. Yeah, exactly.
It was always something like that. Like, I know they blackmailed me, and so that's why I became a Satanist. Yeah, it's fucking hysterical. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you probably came from a similar background to me, mate. I mean, I get on with my parents, but I think they have chosen to just ignore that side of my life. Like, this will probably be episode 73 of the podcast. I don't think my mom has listened to a single fucking word on any of the podcasts yet.
I totally understand. At one point, I attempted to share my music with some of them, and just sort of people from that old lifestyle, and they just, it doesn't matter because whatever. I'm not going to get into that now, but it is a part of the driving force that beckons that rage and anger that you hear, or that the energy, I should say, that is present when coming up with the blasphemous lyrics and the intensity, like type of feeling. There is a lot behind that, because in a sense, mentally, to some, being oppressed in a certain way, or being told to believe a certain thing before you even have your own choice. At some point, somebody's going to make that decision to question why, and so that sort of is what happened with me, and that's why there's so much pent up aggression.
Yeah, and I think something that a lot of people don't get when it comes to metal, and it comes to the visuals and stuff in metal. I mean, I don't know what your personal views are, but I've never been a Satanist myself. I've always been interested in dark topics, and I generally tend to go to watch darker films, read darker books, listen to darker music. But I've never myself been anywhere near to or interested in any form of devilry or Satan worship or anything like that. But then at the same time, like I'll listen to a band and then I'll go, okay, how many more times can Marduk come up with something completely grim and blasphemous and stuff? But then you go, if they stop doing that, it would kind of lose its charm. There's a degree of rebellion and a degree of badassness to singing about the devil that, frankly, I don't want to see go. Like, I could happily do without ever having to listen to another song about a woman being murdered or some gory bullshit. I mean, I don't find that interesting in the least. But like, if I think about a song that you wrote as an example, as soon as I heard The Tormentor, when Kelly played it to me, it was like, holy fuck! Like, all of that same feeling that same rush you get with every single song that you hear that sort of grabs you, that has that slight hint of evil to it, like Hello Waits or something like that. I got that exact same feeling, and hence why she was the one who introduced me to it and loved it, and why I wanted to get you on the show.
Well, that I definitely appreciate that. The Tormentor is still a special song to me, in the sense that it really does channel, and not only lyrically, but the riffs, the progression, the sort of change in tempo, and sort of everything, the way that that it was built, it sort of came out naturally, and it really embodies the spirit, I guess, of Vredensdal. Yeah, I don't know.
Where did that name come from, by the way, Vredensdal? Because Vredensdal is a little town in South Africa where I'm from.
Right.
So whenever you look up Vredensdal, you have like Vredensdal barbecue competition, Vredensdal tractor pull.
Yeah, I know. And what's funny is that I didn't realize that until after I chose the name. So after I started making music, I did the first demo and the EP and the whatever. You Google yourself, because you think, maybe somebody reviewed it, type of thing, and the town came up, and I realized that the town actually says Vredendal without the S. So it said, "Are you sure? Would you like to search for this instead?" So yeah, of course. Anyway, long story short, yeah, that was unintentional, but the name came from a few different things. My mother's maiden name, and part of the reason I chose the name is actually Norwegian, and it roughly translates to Valley of Wrath or Wrath Valley. And in my mother's maiden name, her name is a Scottish version of an Old Norse name that's connected to a word that means valley. And so I was listening at the time. I was trying to figure it all out, and I was listening to a lot of Dimmu Borgir at the time. So they have the song Vredesbeard, which is like, and I looked that up and I saw what it meant, and I thought wrath, like that, that's a powerful word. And one of my favorite bands, Svartarid, has an album called Sadness and Wrath, and like it's sort of connected. So I was like, how do I connect this to me more on a basis that is, I guess, artistic while also personal? So I sort of was just like, I put it together, and it really sort of embodies this idea that like the Valley of Wrath is that place, like the two mountains, and then at the bottom, I don't know how to explain it. Like it's just sort of this this valley, this small place between the mountains that really, I don't know, you can connect with, I guess. I don't know. It's
like it's sort of like the antithesis of the happy place that they tell people to go to experience stress. Yeah. It's like it's a sort of it's an emotional plane.
Right. And I wouldn't have chosen the Norwegian words if it had not been for the fact that on my mom's side, it does go back to having Norwegian ancestors, and a great grandfather of mine came from Norway in the 1800s and whatnot. And that's a bunch of kind of bullshit that comes with being American that everybody will say, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to get into
that. Do you mean you've not traced your ancestry back to the old country, and you pretend like you're from there?
No, I have done the ancestry test, and I have approximately 50 to 60% Norwegian on my mom's side and then the other side is like Spanish. But the thing is that a lot of Americans don't realize that when they say, "Oh yeah, I'm half German, so I can drink a lot," that's like a bunch of bullshit, because it has nothing to do with being German, right? So to speak. So anyway, that's all.
Yeah. And I mean, as I said, I like the name. It's definitely it's unusual. I was going to ask you, and this I've not asked this of anyone before, but I there's a specific reason why I'm going to ask you this question. How old are you?
I always like people to guess.
I want to make sure that I'm not going to be held up on grooming. No. And the reason I ask is like, if I look again at something like the Tormentor, but really the whole record, I was so surprised when we started talking, because and when I saw you on Facebook, because you seemed so young, but the music, it's got the voice of an old soul. I mean, it sounds like a seasoned veteran doing the music, and that's one of the biggest compliments I can give you.
That means a lot to me. I don't know. Well, I am 29 years old.
Okay.
And yes, I would definitely say that probably my age doesn't suit the things that I tend to want to create. But I definitely believe that we shouldn't be bound by the era that we're born into. I really feel that if you have a connection to something, if you push that away, if for example, you find, I don't know, 1970s fashion interesting, and you just say, well, that's not really in right now, so I'm not going to look into it because maybe people won't think I'm cool or some kind of shit like that. Well, then you're pushing away a part of yourself. So I've, over time, as I've sort of unchristianized myself from childhood, really sort of searched deep into the things that I wasn't supposed to connect with as a kid. I went, instead of going backwards, but full force, to the extreme, pushing myself to the limit of what really are you? Who are you? And that's sort of where the introspection, the philosophy behind the lyrics come from in most things, because if you limit yourself to well, this is 2021, this is what people are doing, you're just going to end up living somebody else's life. So I've just been trying to work my way naturally, and I find a connection to people from more than just my age. You have to, in a sense, learn to respect the fact that people have lived and died, believing totally different things, liking different things. And if you can't do that, well, then you're going to be another black metal edgelord who sings about Satan like everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I do find it interesting when I look at a lot of the newer generation, and I don't want to sound like some old crank that's sitting here going, "Oh, these fucking kids." But I do find there seems to be a decreasing amount of respect given from certain quarters of the newer generations, to the old guard. Well, I find it very weird, and I mean, in normal music, that's commonplace. I remember the most old I've ever felt was about 6 years ago. I was having a conversation with these kids, and not kids, but graduates at a place that I was working at, and I was asking, and they were asking me, "Oh, what kind of music are you into?" And I explained to them what it was, and then I asked them, "What are you into?" And they're like, "Oh, we're into old school gangster rap." And I was like, "Oh, like stuff like NWA, Cypress Hill," and they literally looked at me like I was speaking fucking Swahili.
That's funny.
So then with metal, it's a little different, but I still find nowadays when I speak to younger people, a lot of them don't know about they don't know about Celtic Frost, they don't know about Venom. No. They don't know about, they barely know any of the early Death albums. I remember talking to somebody once about Death, and specifically they were like, "Oh, I didn't know that band existed." Yeah. And they were somebody in an established band. I was like, what the fuck?
That's sort of backwards, ass backwards. But somehow, I don't know. I totally agree with what you're saying. It's like people knowing Destruction for Destruction, but not hearing the Destruction First EP or demo or whatever, and that's like pinnacle for the black metal, pioneers with Bathory and all that stuff. And I don't know, like it really came from I can't express it more when I sort of escaped from the mentality that was in this forceful religious philosophy. I began to look and look because I didn't feel like it was worth my time to continue to live my life in a way that was made up of other people's opinions. So that's really what it has to do with, and the more people that you can connect with, despite their age, the more you're going to learn. And if you're going to enhance yourself as an individual, why shut yourself off to only one age group? One type of thinking.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that's it's the same thing with the music. It's definitely black metal. Actually, it's funny because I sent it to a quote unquote unnamed YouTube page to be uploaded, and they said, "Well, this is not true black metal." And I said, "Why?" Because it doesn't have corpse paint and blast beats, like 100% of the way. And of course, they had nothing to say. Meanwhile, here we are, talking about it because of what it is.
Is that the black or the YouTube page that I'm thinking of?
Yes, probably.
Name rhymes with lotion.
Yeah. Ooh, what are we going to talk about now?
So I reached out to Mr. Lotion and actually asked him whether he wanted to come on the show, and he was like, I don't do podcasts. But I was very curious to meet the man behind the face. But I'm surprised, considering some of the crap that he puts up there, that he wouldn't have uploaded you.
Yeah, he uploaded the first album and it did well. Got a lot of response on there, and I think that's what helped in the beginning. I was, when you I sort of envisioned the album being on the website, etc., and being, whoa, it sounds so much different than the last one, etc., all that stuff, and it didn't happen. And I was just like, I talked to a friend of mine who's in a band who's been around for a while, and he was just like, fuck those guys, move on, don't worry about it, because that's not what it's about. It's not about the promotion as much as it is, the people who connect with it. So I was like, okay, And the next album, I'm gonna try again, which is in the works. It's done actually, and we're gonna go for it and see what happens then. Maybe it's true black metal. Maybe it's worthy of subpar possible. I mean, it's funny because I'm actually looking at that more often than I would like to admit, but it's interesting to see how many people will be attracted to a certain noise. And what like one of the biggest reasons why the Tyrant Shade was important for me to do was actually because of the old school connection, the thrash influence, death metal influence. Like right now, everybody's got a huge boner for like this atmospheric thing, which is fine, but at times it's gotten so popular that people who don't have that, that inner metal gene, I guess you could call it, begin to try to make the music because it's so simple. It's contemporary rock with distortion and screaming vocals in a sense. And I feel like I had to sort of rebel. I had to let go of that whole idea that black metal has to have only open chords and it has to only be this and that. And it's just like
I'm very, very much with you there. I mean, there's a couple of, like with all music genres, and certainly all subgenres in metal, I will make an exception. There are some very cool atmospheric black metal bands.
Agree.
But for the most part, what revs my engine is I need a degree of anger to it as well. I don't mind if it's like, if I think of great like what I would deem aggressive atmospheric black metal, Panzerfaust. These last two records that they brought out. The atmosphere to me is in the the airplane samples, the bombs, all of that shit that they've got going, and then all of the other violence. That to me is atmospheric. But like I said, there's an edge to it. Selbst, the last record they did, Aversio Humanitatis, the last record they did, there might be elements of atmospheric black metal in there, but it's still black metal at its core. It's still angry, aggressive, fast music. What I particularly don't like is stuff like Deaf Heaven and things that kind of, I feel like I'm not a purist or an elitist by any stretch of the imagination, and I certainly don't want anyone to think that I'm some edgelord. But when I hear bands like that have parts in it that sounds cheerful, I almost find it personally offensive. It's like,
I totally agree with you. I was very opposed to Ghost Bath when they came out, just because it sounded like some emo guy wanted to just add a blast beat to his music. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I try not to get into this mental place of putting other bands down for their own creativity. I just can't get into it. I talked to this one label one time about the possibility of releasing my music, and it was on the more atmospheric side. He goes, well, I just don't think that you're would fit, and that's fine because Vredensdal's fairly raw. And he goes, I just sort of like more so, beautiful pictures, sunny landscapes that are sort of in contrast to the music that's so angry or whatever, he said. And I just didn't get that because it's like, I don't know, it's like saying that, oh yeah, I love to eat meat, but I'm a vegan, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, you know what it really is like. It's like vegans saying, "Try this burger; it tastes just like real meat." It's like, well, what the fuck is the point of that?
Yeah. Just eat real.
But I mean, so this here's a great example, right? This album cover. How can anybody tell me that this is fucking black metal, or that this has or should have any connection to black metal by any any stretch of the imagination?
I mean, the name, the color in general, the first thing I think of is some sort of model. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of some makeup commercial about some, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Years where they got particularly cult, but I mean, it still sucks.
It's weird, but I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah. And the one label that I was talking about released a pink CD, a pink tape with a landscape of a farm that was a sunrise in the sky, and there's fucking cows, and I was just like, what the hell, you know what I mean? Like this just doesn't give you that feeling. But of course, then there is always the opposition, which is extreme corpse paint, extreme, contrast photos of the black and the white, which is, I mean,
also lame.
Yeah, I mean, at one point you gotta kind of rein it in there, but those are there for the people that need it, and those are there for the people that need it. And then there's those weird ass guys that are sort of in the middle like me, and you kind of like it too. So I'm just like, all right,
Well, I think I mean that again, part of why I do my own show and I try and steer clear of most record labels. I mean, there's a select few who I really like, and I like the people that run the label, and I want to kind of have, I like promoting the bands on their label if I like what I hear, obviously, but. I think there's a degree of integrity there, but for the most part, I want to be as independent and far away from the industry as I possibly can be, because I have my own tastes and I've got my own views and stuff, and I want to be able to say and do whatever I want. I don't want to. I remember, sitting in, sitting waiting to interview bands when I was writing for Chronicles of Chaos, and you listen to some of the PR people talking, and they're like, "Oh, this person gave, unnamed Swedish, melodic death metal band whose name rhymes with frenemy. He gave it a bad review, so he's blacklisted. He's never allowed to interview anyone on the label again." It's like stuff like that, man. And it got to a point where there was so many melodic death metal records being put out. It's sort of getting so tiresome, because it's like, how many more times can I say that this music fucking sucks? And then, but at the same time, it as you say, that's the right music for some people to listen to, which is absolutely fine. Right. It's just not for me. I want to be able to, and this is why I like what I do on this show. I want to be able to do whatever I feel like doing and play and promote whatever I like and nothing else.
Yeah, and that's just the whole sort of mentality behind what I want to do is like, in my mind, here's the way that I picture it. The first album, Fealty of Diabolism, was a sort of, okay, here's who I am. I understand black metal, right? Because it sounds like a black metal album should, with a little few of my flares thrown in there. Second album is, I understand where it came from. And third album, which is coming out soon, is, I feel, more so an emphasis on what I think that it could be, if that makes sense. It's less thrash than the Tyrant Shade, and it's more emotional than both of the two albums. I would say, at least anyway. But it's also, incredibly grim, in my opinion, because it touches on things more than just that one thing that you're expecting to hear. Like, if like, it's so hard to explain, because there's so many bands out there that'll say, we're occult black metal, and their music is right the whole time, and that's great, again, for the people that like to hear it. But there's something that comes from the quiet before the storm. That's like what makes the storm so intense is the fact that there is a quiet before it, and there's an ending to the storm. You can't have I don't know, like something that's so offensive if you didn't have morals beforehand. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I'm trying to, with my own music, sort of, understand myself more, listen to this Lotion page, and understand what I don't want to sound like. You know what I mean? Yeah. And just go from there. I have
so that page does have very cool stuff on, and I do listen to it a lot. But what I'm always astounded by, just in terms of the variety of people that you get, and what people like, is there'll be some stuff that I listen to and then I just go, this is embarrassingly shit. And then you can be guaranteed there's at least 5-6 people that that'll post something to the effect of, "Thank you so much for posting this. It's already my number one.
It changed my life. I got to go change my pants now." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, but again, it's very often it's those those forest scenes and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
I'm of the Morgan from Marduk school of thought when it comes to that. He said, black metal's supposed to be a fist in the face of God, not someone's lying, sitting by the lake crying.
That's hilarious. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, totally. I totally get that. It's like punk rock, for evil motherfuckers, I guess.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I wanted to ask you, because you touched on it a few times, and I myself was pretty deep down this down this life as well. So
Sure.
how, you mentioned growing up in a really devout Christian household.
Yep.
Were you yourself practicing? Did you kind of were you of the faith? And I guess what was kind of the journey to bring you to where you are today?
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that, because again, it's a big part of the music. So I lived my life as a child would, listening to their parents as best as I could. I tried to get out, in the sense of, I felt like I didn't understand myself, so I listened to all kinds of different music. Certain music I wasn't allowed to buy, certain types of clothes I wasn't allowed to wear. I didn't have any band shirts. I didn't go to any concerts. I couldn't celebrate Halloween, that kind of thing. I thought that was normal life because I was doing the right thing in the name of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was something that was building up inside of me that felt, it just felt like I wasn't complete, and like, this just can't be it. Like this can't be my whole life. I'm dedicated to something that I don't even feel. I would go to church, and people would be singing the songs, and everybody would be raising their hands up, and I would be like the guy looking around, sort of like, I just don't feel what you guys are feeling. Like, you guys look like you're having an orgasm, and I'm sitting here like, where's mine? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just didn't get it. And so I had to get out of my house. So I joined the military at 17. My mom had to sign a waiver, and a year, let's see, I turned 18, and then like 7 to 8 months later, I was deployed. I went to Iraq. Saw some shit. Oh yeah. I know it's like a weird thing. I saw some shit of my own, and I talked to some people, and throughout the way, and I sort of began to like develop this inner voice. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as you stop listening to outside influences, you begin to sort of, there's the quiet time, and then there's this thing that sort of appears out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's me. You know what I mean? And I began to develop that voice, and from there, my parents were around. I was 18, 19 years old, or actually I came back from Iraq in I think I was 19 when I came back, and then I was already drinking. I mean, you're already taught how to use a weapon. You know what I mean? So I was drinking. I was smoking some random shit at some at some points, and I was doing whatever I could to sort of feel more than death and regret, and sort of like, I wasted 17 years of my life, type of thing. And then it sort of came to me. Everybody has to make their mistakes. The only way to learn is to fail. So if you're not reflecting on your failures, if you're pushing that out, you're not going to grow. So I was using that and constantly growing. I'm totally embarrassed of a lot of the things that I've done.
I don't think it's embarrassing at all, mate.
No. I just mean, like, no, to get to the point where I feel comfortable enough to share, the creative side of myself. So yeah, I was definitely believing, because I thought that I was supposed to, and then over time I hit that point when I was overseas that made me question, the big question: what is this all about? And of course, I believe now there's no definitive answer, but I do consider myself a Satanist, according to the works of Anton LaVey. That's not a popular opinion, but it works for me, and I really don't care what other people think, and that's just, but again, that's just for me, and it has caused a lot of interesting opportunities for reflection, experiences, conversation from people you know, a lot of people don't think about the person who's been on both sides, having a conversation with that person, because they'll talk to you and they don't know that you already know what they're thinking in that sense, not fully. So, long story short, yes, I was at one point. I hit a giant speed bump, and now I'm not anymore. But I'm totally aware of the habits of most Christian people. I think.
Yeah.
I think I can say that confidently.
And I mentioned to you that I we come from similar backgrounds, I think, in that regard. I went to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, all the way up to I was probably 18 by the time that I stopped doing that.
Right.
Probably part of it because I finished school at 17, because we finished school at 18 in South Africa, but I was accelerated ahead by a year. So I finished school a year earlier. So probably when I was about 18, I kind of started to just make excuses to not go to not go every Sunday night and every Sunday during the day. But I mean, I think for me, there was always kind of a stubbornness, and I remember when I was very young, I got into, this is actually going to be on the episode that posts prior to this. I was talking to Aaron Stainthorpe of My Dying Bride about Depeche Mode and discovering them. And that was kind of my first band I discovered. But even that already was, for a 5-year-old, which is how old I was when I discovered it, it was pretty dark music for a 5-year-old to like. But then I was always drawn to stuff that was darker and I remember when I heard an electric guitar for the first time, it was on a song done in a intentionally heavy way. It was hearing "I Want to Rock" by Twisted Sister, and again I remember the look of disdain and disgust from my dad as this was playing, and just for me it was like, this is the fucking best thing I've ever heard in my life. And then I remember hearing AC/DC, and you kind of go on from there. Yeah, but I got to a point in my life, like I was also, I considered myself to be deeply devout. I've read the Bible cover to cover many times, in part because I used to be bored at church, so
sure,
I couldn't exactly sit reading comic books while the guy was preaching. So I used to just read the Bible. So anyway, so I got to a point where with the musical evolution where I was getting, stuff like Slayer and things like that. And I can, a lot of people that have not been in that position, but I think you're going to be able to get what I'm talking about. Yeah. I don't think they quite realize how difficult it is for someone who's been born into a certain way of thinking and been told what, this is the right thing and everything else is wrong for their whole life. How difficult it is to, I guess the amount of sort of inner turmoil that you go through. Definitely. As you convince yourself that what you're doing is not wrong, and you kind of start making deals with the Lord, and then you start coming up with all sorts of ideas. Well, if he got Jeff Hanneman to be able to play guitar that well, how could this possibly be evil?
You're funny.
And then you go, right? Well, Tom is just singing a story, and then you move on to the next band. The next band is Morbid Angel, God of Emptiness. It's like, okay, we're in dicey territory. Yeah. How can there's no way I can get around this.
It's so horrible, but I can't look away. I can't turn it off. Yeah, I totally understand.
But again, I mean, there is a degree of inner turmoil. I mean, I remember being so paranoid about it when I was like, 14, 15 years old. Like if I knew I had a big test or a big exam coming up, or, had problems with a girlfriend or whatever, I would deliberately not listen to certain bands like on that day, just in case, if God gets pissed off and punishes me about this.
Oh crap! I lost my parents in the store. Perhaps they've been raptured, and I'm a sinner. And I'm stuck here. You know what I mean? Like that's some sort of mental abuse. That's pushing it. But I think you understand what I'm saying. To where you begin to depend on the fear that is put into you, and it's like, how am I supposed to be a successful person, doing the things that I want to do as a human being, if every decision that I have to make is based on the answer of somebody that I can't even see, right? That's just the very basic level of it. But
well, also something you mentioned that was interesting, because I had that was one of my big issues. I remember, being in church, and then you see people with their eyes shut and their hands up in the air, and or they're giving these testimonies about how the Lord helped them find this, and they helped them with something, and then they'll go, well, the Lord spoke to me. And I kept on I always felt like the problem was with me, and I was like, why does God not speak to me?
Right.
Like the way they're describing it, they hear him, the pitch perfect, high resolution voice, and he's talking to them, and I'm praying and doing everything I possibly can and trying to be the best person possible, but he's not speaking to me.
There's something wrong with you. There has to be, right?
Exactly. So then, so you start getting very hard on yourself about that. I think that was one of the big things, one of the big catalysts for me. But then also at the same time, by the same token, I never felt like I belonged there. As for as young as I was, I remember being 6, 7 years old, and you see people standing there singing their hymns and being happy about whoever getting baptized or whatever the case may be. And I always felt like not a disgust, but just an aversion to it. Like it's like this is not for you, kind of thing. Whoever this this might work for some people, but it doesn't work for me. And I've always felt that my whole life. So for me, I also went, as I kind of moved away from that from that life, there wasn't one big thing for me. It was just as I grew older, I just kind of feel like I just evolved past it, and it just wasn't important to me anymore.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. And another interesting part of this story, I guess, is so my dad loves music, loved it. I don't know really anymore, but like when I was a kid, he was in rock and roll bands, right? Because he grew up in the 70s, or and stuff like that, 60s and 70s, and he was a drummer, and I mean he was the guy who showed me Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, and like he has a humongous record collection, incredible taste in music, like very articulate with the way he hears things, and I was really impressed by it. And then like I don't know what age I was at some point, boom, it just all stopped, and that time comes where you're not, you can't listen to secular music, and you can't do this and you can't do that, out of nowhere, and I was like, well, I didn't get it. I loved the sound of it, like it made me feel something, like I felt great, and I don't know, like that little thing stuck with me. Like I remember my dad having this big stereo and putting on something. It's probably Deep Purple, like I can't think of the song at the time, but yeah, it just hit me. And then there's this moment of separation, and nope, you can't go back, and that stuck with me. And even that whole Halloween video thing, I was still interested by that darkness. Like I wanted them to go interview the guy before he stopped being a Satanist. I wanted them to go more into talking about what those bad people were doing, because that's just what connected with me, and it sort of stuck with me. And yeah, there's some people it's just the right thing, and other people it's not. Some people like pink cassette tapes and album covers, and some people like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just it is just what it is, I guess. It's weird.
Yeah. But I do think I think a lot of folks that haven't gone through that, they don't necessarily appreciate it. And also coming full circle to your experiences in Iraq, I get how extraordinarily difficult it is for somebody who's grown up in a fundamentalist religion to turn their back on it, especially one where turning your back on it means it's checkmate. Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's interesting, like you're saying, it's like speaking two languages. It's like knowing two cultures. Because I'm sure you and I could walk into some church that we've never been to and act just exactly how they expect somebody to act, because it is sort of a put on.
Yeah.
And to define yourself, I feel, is to separate the person, to eviscerate that put on, and every interaction that you have, just be yourself. And I believe in my own way, with a lot of the philosophy that I've read, that's the hardest thing in life, really, is to be yourself.
No, I agree. I think the hardest thing is to get to the point where you embrace who you are. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people feel like that's the being yourself, but you are yourself. Right. I think it's the embrace of the person that you are, and actually treating that as a strength and as an asset, rather than something that's debilitating, and I went through it myself. I think I've spoken about it on the podcast before, but I mean, I've had people that, I've been fortunate enough to have people encourage me along the way, but for the longest time, I remember, you whether it was at work or whether it was at school, you feel like the odd person out, and I've been probably too stubborn to ever buckle to peer pressure in any way, but I think not buckling to peer pressure and withdrawing leads ultimately to the same result. You're the fucking loner standing in the corner like an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, then I feel you there.
Yeah, and then, but I think for me again, it takes time to get to that point. But I do think the big journey you make is embracing who you are as a person, and like I said, and learning to treat that like it's a positive rather than a negative. And unfortunately, some people never get to it, and they end up killing themselves, which is terrible.
And and then there's the entire vortex of the Christians who commit suicide, and that's like a whole nother story that I could get into.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I was going to ask you, what did you go to Iraq as? Like what? Like
branch, army?
Infantryman? Infantryman.
Yep.
So you Bravo? Went through you went through the Marine Corps, or how did you go?
Okay, so it's the Army and the Marine, and then so the U.S. Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy. I was in the Army.
Okay, and how was your basic training as tough as they depicted on Full Metal Jacket?
Yes and no, not necessarily. There's a lot of things that we can sort of leave to Hollywood, but there are essences of that are there. It's definitely difficult. You have no sense of personal space. Your opinion doesn't matter. You're yelled at constantly. You're woken up abruptly. You're trained to do the job, and by the end, you believe that the enemy is just a silhouette, and that's just life. And when you're in that place, there is a mental space that you have to sort of become in order to do the job properly. It doesn't matter what you are. If you're a mailman, for example, or a surgeon, the second that you put on that suit and you walk into the field that you're supposed to be doing, you become the best surgeon you can be, the best mailman, or whatever it may be, interviewer, musician. It doesn't matter, but it's the same thing. It's part of the human condition. So yeah, it's the same. I mean, now that you mention it, I sort of I use that. There's a place between rational and irrational killing that you sort of have to define when you're in that place. Like, I can't say whether or not the things that happen for me are the worst, because there's surely worse, and there are surely far easier or simpler or softer experiences that everybody's gone through. I can't define that my experience are more valued or more intense or more reason to listen to, because there's 100 people that I've been in the military, and 100 of those people maybe didn't have the exact same upbringing that I had. So how can you say that the effect that going on deployment had for them was the same for me? It's just not the same. So in basic training, it's meant to break you, so that to rebuild you into the person that they need to be the infantryman or the scout.
I was being facetious about Full Metal Jacket, but it did kind of have a point. I fucking love it, but it's a great movie.
It's a great movie. I definitely own that one.
But I remember my dad and I watching that the first time, and he was in the military as well. He was a drill sergeant, and he was laughing his fucking head off like throughout the first half of the movie, because he said to me, like, this is exactly what we used to do. The same amount of shit, the same amount of shouting, and exactly as you just said, you want to weed out pretty quickly who's weak, and you want to make sure that these people, these you're effectively getting boys, and you want to rebuild these boys into men. So I have extraordinary amounts of respect for the military. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the wars, but I certainly will never in a million years. I can't abide by anybody that disrespects anything about, or certainly the people who serve in the military.
Fair enough. I totally get it. Yeah.
But in terms of your, I guess, what you took away from that, has any of the, I guess, the habits like, waking up early, all of that sort of stuff, the discipline they instilled in you, are there positives that you took away from that experience?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of positives. My intuition has grown significantly, I would say. You have to learn to deal with situations, high intensity situations specifically, and I've used those and applied them to a lot of the post-military civilian jobs that I've taken up. Since coming from there, I can unabashedly or whatever say that I've been successful in most of the jobs that I've had coming out of the military, because I can walk into it and say, this is the job, this is what I need to do. I have to learn it, the best that I can, and apply my creative skills to it. And that's what I've done. And I've been successful so far. And I finally come to a place where I have a job that I can actually do music in my spare time now. And so that's why things like the Tyrant Shade can be so creative, is because I'm comfortable, I'm successful with what I'm doing. And there is a lot that goes into coming from the military. For me personally, I can't say for everybody, because there's people who get kicked out of the military for drug charges, or things like that. It's all personal. It's what you choose to do with that thing, and that's that whole individuality complex, personal strength and capabilities and blah blah blah. It connects to Satanism for me. That's sort of why it all, I've had to do everything on my own. I had to recreate myself at the certain age while in the military to define, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Do I have a purpose? Is there such thing as a purpose? What the fuck is a soul? Like all that sort of goes into recreating yourself and defining what you think is important. And for me at the time when I created the Tyrant Shade, riffs were important. Riffs are still important. Riffs are always important. You know what I mean? and that's just
there's plenty of those on the Tyrant Shade, mate.
Pretty proud of those. I'm pretty proud of those riffs. That Tormentor riff is particularly inspired by the Age of Nero Satyricon album.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a particular lyric on the Tormentor that I absolutely love, and I was going to ask you about this. And then I very rarely ask people about lyric meanings.
That's fine.
There's a line: "I have found the Tormentor in the grave of diversity." Like at first I thought it was like some anti-Antifa shit. I was like, yeah. Like, what is it, tell me a bit more about that lyric.
Okay, real quick. You have to read the second part to it. I found the Tormentor in the grave of diversity. And then what's the next part?
He speaks wisely of black magic and blood pride mercilessly.
Yeah, okay. So the Tormentor, the diversity thing has nothing to do specifically with race, but it has more so to do with the diversity of human, I guess, intellect. And like, think about it in the way that is more connected to our experiences.
Yeah.
So the grave of diversity is the place where, let's, how they say, we're all the same before we're about to die, or some crap like that. Like in the end, we're all blood and bone, or some, you know what I mean? Like at the grave of our differences as people, whether it's race, whether it's beliefs or understanding, because I had to come to that place myself. We all do at some point, whether it's severe or more passive. It doesn't matter, because that's the life that you or me are living. But in my grave of diversity, in the place where I saw that we are all the same as I guess as a human, but not in the sense of, it's a little touchy, but you know what I mean? we're very similar as individuals, and we all
I get what you're driving at.
Yeah.
It's like we all walk very different paths for a variety of reasons, and we all have those paths form our modes of thinking, but ultimately all of those modes of thinking, all of those experiences, they all kind of lead to one conclusion that's the same for us all,
which is we're all bound to die.
Yeah.
So at the grave of all of our beliefs and all of our understanding, the only thing that I could cling to is the magic and the blood that I have. I mean, we can't define other people's experiences, and that's just what it comes down to. The tormentor is the anti-you, is the person that tells you to do the thing that you're not supposed to do, to look into the dark thing, the thing that's gonna shake you, it's gonna fuck you up. You know what I mean? It's that thing that's over here telling you to look up a snuff film or something wicked. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it pushes you to that extreme. I mean, there are tons of people out there who are not Satanists who can say that they've read the Satanic Bible, or vice versa, the Holy Bible, because they were just interested in it. They wanted to know why people thought that, and so that's sort of what that means. The grave of diversity is, the place where we're all just blood and bone. In the end.
And it's such an eloquent way of putting it as well. I kind of like that lyric even more now because of that. But again, to your point, I mean, a lot of what I was always attracted to has always been understanding why people think and behave and do the things that they do. I love, generally speaking, almost any industry or any scenario that I can look at and I know I'll never, it'll never be me that does that. But I'm always interested in what got the person to that point, and what drives them when they're in that. So that could apply to anything, pro wrestling,
Absolutely.
Serial killers, porn, whatever it is. It's these people that live these extreme lives, and it's a life that I would never live myself. I would never choose to live myself. But I'm always so fascinated by, the path that they took to actually get there.
Sure, definitely. Interesting story I have is a guy drove up from Milwaukee to take some pictures of me for something, right?
Yeah.
Was
this like a paid affair, or
no,
was it just some random dude?
He contacted me and said, hey, can I take some of your photographs for a college class? Because I want to interview an artist for this project that I have to do. And, I want to, do you, not in that way, you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, and I was like, sure. He's also in another Wisconsin band that I like, and I know some of the guys. So it was like the first time sort of meeting somebody, and the first thing he said to me was like, hey, I totally thought you were going to be like this black metal guy that was cold and grim. And I was like, yeah, I figured that, because that's what everybody thinks, that when you meet somebody who makes black metal music, they have to be the shadow, like that's.
Let's be frank though, and I've met hundreds, if not thousands, of black metal folks and bands. There's only one man who's truly grim in black metal, and that's Gol. Everybody else is the friendliest, nicest person ever.
Yep, I have nothing to say.
And again, honestly, though, Gol, I've seen. I don't know whether you listen to the Thomas Erickson podcast, but I listened to the one that he did with Gol. He seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah. Well, yep, definitely.
He doesn't seem like the sometimes not like the happiest dude, but he's. I mean, he to me though, I really do feel like when I listen to Gol's Verd, or when I listen to those. To me, the apex of Gorgoroth's discography, which is Twilight of the Idols and Ad Majorem Satanas Gloriam, that to me, very few things embody black metal to me like that guy and what he does as an artist.
Yeah, definitely. Ad Majorem Satanas or whatever, that album, I listened to thousands of times, I'm sure, at this point.
It's fucking phenomenal.
It's
absolutely incredible.
It's escapism in a matter of like 30-40 minutes, it's wild. But I totally agree with you, and that's what I believe makes black metal so I should say the good black metal, the stuff that really touches you. Not sexually, maybe sexually.
Yeah.
But that stuff that sort of changes you a little bit, maybe. I don't know, whatever the case may be. Are those people who can really define that line, who can say, this is who I am and this is who I can be, or this is who I want to be in this moment. But they're in control of that. They're not the person that's saying, I'm a misanthrope, I hate everybody, and I never want to be married, I never want to have kids, I want to be a fucking hermit. Like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The difference is that there are people who are that way and can express themselves because they're expressing their experiences. But for somebody who hasn't had those experiences and decides, I like black metal because I have a lot of negative opinions or because of whatever, you're sort of like turning yourself into that edgelord that everybody makes fun of.
Oh, dude, and when you hit that point, then you go to metal Twitter, and you fall in with that crowd. I have rarely seen as many fuck ups on one contained on one digital platform as you will see on metal Twitter. It is unfucking real. I mean, I hate Twitter as it is. I mean, I only use it to promote stuff for the show.
Whatever.
But for the most part, there are so many complete idiots on there. It's astonishing to me.
And my personal opinion is that those people are just they just like you said, they haven't embraced who they are yet. They could be a K-pop fan and they just don't know it. You know what I mean? Like,
totally. I've spoken about this before. There's a significant chunk of people that get into metal and get into the fringes of metal because for the most part we're a pretty accepting bunch of people, and they get into it because they don't feel like they belong anywhere else. So they then come, they get into this scene. They get generally accepted because there's a whole bunch of weirdos here, so we accept most people anyway.
Yep.
But generally speaking, in 5-6 years' time, they're the kind of person who you'll meet and, they'll ask you, what kind of music do you listen to? And you go, well, I listen to Mayhem and I listen to Burzum and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, I used to listen to that, but I grew out of it. I've experienced that multiple times in my life. And I always think there's a big chunk of people that claim to be into this music that's the path that they'll walk, and eventually they'll be into the Killers, or they'll be listening to Oasis, or maybe they'll think WAP is actually not all that bad.
Oh geez, yep. I know what you're talking about. Like, I'm a huge fan of doom metal. A lot of the groovy sort of mid-tempo stuff is inspired by a lot of the doom metal that is. Mm-hmm. It has a lot of the same mindset as some black metal music with the doom. But it's sort of a similar thing where you can look up doom metal and there's 100 bands with almost a very similar guitar riff on the blues scale that sound like Black Sabbath because it's just overdriven. It's everywhere, no matter where you go. You just have to pick the few things, or sort of settle or compromise with the few things that that really make you feel good, and just and say, these things are what make me feel good, so I'm going to continue to enhance myself with these things. Like, and some people they can't just make a decision, and I think that's where it comes from. So I don't know.
I would agree with you. Quick, best or favorite doom metal bands?
Electric Wizard.
Oh, fuck yes.
Yeah. Definitely Electric Wizard. There's a band from the UK called Dope Smoker. Mm-hmm. Love them. They tie in a lot of grunge essence with their Sabbath style, I guess. But they also have a sort of hypnotic, sort of repetitive thing that they do that I really love. I love that sort of thing that can sort of take you away. So Dope Smoker, I love Electric Wizard. Sleep is paramount with the First Holy Mountain.
Well, Matt, you talk about riffs. There are few men who have the ability to fucking shoot out riffs like lightning beams from his fingers than Matt Pike. That dude is astonishing.
Definitely. Huge inspiration for me musically. Like, because like I saw High on Fire live, and that's his other band, post sleep.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I'm an enormous fan of that band.
Yeah, and that's like this guy can do like, this is a great example of being able to understand one thing and then understand another thing and say, yeah, these are both of who I am, and I'm capable of showing you that. Like that's serious, understanding of either of yourself or control or whatever you want it to be. But yeah, like still to this day, like there's a lot of doom bands that can't touch that Dragonaut riff. Like that's just, it's just the riff. Like, yeah. So
but the thing about him that I also that to me is incredible. There's very few musicians that you'll see this with. But if I think about musicians where there's some people when they pick up a guitar and they play, it's extraordinarily technical, and that a tremendous amount of work went into being able to do what they do. Like right. Like a good example for me is Cole Sanders of Nile. Like I look at what he does, and it's so precise, and there's such dexterity to how he plays. You know that when you watch a dude play guitar, you're watching a true master at work.
Sure.
But then there are men like Matt Pike and Dimebag Darrell, who literally look to me when they play like they pick up the instrument and everything is just coming. It just flows naturally out of them, and you see it when they play as well. They've got this they've got this look on their face, like they're completely lost in what they're doing, and that everything that's coming out of the guitar is genuinely just whatever they're pouring out, whatever emotion they have that's inside them is just pouring out.
Right.
And Matt Pike might be one of the very greatest as far as I'm concerned at that that particular sound. I mean, I don't even know if you describe it as a sound, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
The feeling, yep.
Yeah. So two more questions and then I'll let you go. So firstly, Tyrant Shade made it to a couple of top 20s of 2020 last year, which you must have been super chuffed with.
Yep, I was. I was pretty excited about it. I think that a lot of the fans were expecting the first album feeling and sound, but that's not who I am. I have to continue to move forward. So the Tyrant Shade caught some people off guard. But for the people who did understand what I was going for, I was surely appreciative of that, and happy that those guys who are that can listen to Bathory and also listen to other bands that are coming out now can totally get that, and that's really cool. And I'm very appreciative of this interview in general, as well, because if I'm honest, I think this is the first video interview I've done. So
awesome. I appreciate you being on it, mate. When you get big, I will be using this to promote myself and also ultimately to make money.
Funny.
So
yeah, you're funny. But yeah, totally stoked about that. Surprised in some ways. Also like, oh come on, like that's all you know what I mean? That's it. I should have been number one. No, but not really. But I'm definitely proud of it. So yep, that's for sure.
And next record you said is done. What's the plans as far as the release is concerned? What's your strategy with that one?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. I was hoping that you would, so I wouldn't have to be that asshole and like, let me tell you about my music.
Yeah.
So Screaming Skull Records in Norway is going to do a straight to vinyl release, which is going to be the first for me. It's not going to be a lathe cut. It's going to be a black wax. There are going to be a color variant as well. It's going to be co-released with the German label. Hopefully I pronounce this correctly. Schattenfad Records. They're going to do a vinyl release, and it's awesome. It's in my opinion, it's the best of both worlds. So you can sort of expect the cold grim of the first album, while having sort of more of the diversity transitions that you may find on the Tyrant Shade, but without losing the respect and the feeling from the old days, because that's really what in my opinion should drive the person creating black metal now. Is you have to at least have a base of where you come from. There's a lot of bands these days in 2021 that are listening to black metal bands in 2010 and finding their inspiration 10 years ago, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. But there's a chance that those 2010 bands listen to 1999 bands and 1991 bands, et cetera, right? So the only thing that I'm trying to do specifically with Vredensdal and this next album is just emphasize that connection to that feeling that we felt when we first heard, like you said, Mayhem or Berzoom or Darkthrone. And I should mention that New Wave of USBM is on there. It's bold. It's on the back cover, so everybody can see it. New Wave of USBM was never supposed to be specifically for me. It was never supposed to be this is me. Look at me. It's more of an idea that I hope other people can understand, and I hope that other musicians and bands can sort of see it and say, this guy's trying to do something for the community of people from America, making black metal that still have that connection to the original quality that it should have been. It's about the feeling. It's about the essence, the anger, like you were saying. Less about the technicalities. But you will not lose the technicality or the articulate aspects of the riffs, because that's what drives me to create. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna. There's no set date currently, but it will be on vinyl. It will definitely be on cassette through Screaming Skull Records, and we're working out a possible CD variant, whether it's a US based type thing where I self-produce it, or we go through another label. We're not sure yet. So this is for anybody out there, I guess, if still looking. CDs are in the works, hopefully as well. But the album is going to be called Silence is Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a quick rundown on that, just because it's sort of unique. The idea is just that silence is the base and the aftermath of all action. So whether you're committing a crime or creating something beautiful, it first comes with thought, and thought starts with silence. And silence is eternal is the sort of aspect of that human existence, the thing that we all feel, whether we go to work or work, in a coma. Like, it's just that it's just the human condition, the suffering, the day to day. That's sort of what it boils down to. And I hope that you would look into the lyrics some more, because the lyrics are important to me. It really explains the philosophy, what I feel and what I believe, I guess, through my experiences. And I'm really excited. The album cover art is sick. Like, I think people are going to say, like, whoa, like what is that? You know what I mean? It looks classic, but it's also fresh. I don't know. So yeah.
And any idea on when about it's going to be released?
It should be this year. I think they're looking closer to fall.
Yeah.
And depending on the vinyl plant, we've already spoken about the colors and whatnot. It should be 3 to 5 weeks plus from there, from when they really submit that. So yeah, I'm gonna go with fall to winter, late, cool. Early winter, November, December. But let's go with fall, hopefully, so that way we can really get it out there. I think fall is a great time for the album anyway. It was more so written in that time as well. So
awesome. All right, my brother. Thank you very much for your time. We will do it again at some point down the road. Cool. I had a great time catching up with you, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the new music. So, awesome. Congratulations on, in my view, an awesome start to your career, and hopefully, in years too, many more years ahead.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Really fast, I got to promote myself one time and say that I do have to say that I do have another sort of doom metal project coming out. It is nothing like Vredensdal, and this is more of a connection to myself and just that thing that I was telling you about, being able to do both things. And it doesn't have a name yet. It doesn't really have any sort of drive, but it does have songs. So look out for my doom stoner rock metal thing coming out at some point, and then I do have riffs already for at least 6 songs worth of the 4th Vredensdal album. It's gonna be wicked.
Awesome.
Yep. So that's all.
Badass. Thanks very much, brother. That was a track called The Tormentor by Vredensdal. It's off a record called The Tyrant Shade. It made it to a number of top 10s and top 20s last year. So if you haven't checked out that record yet, definitely make sure that you do. And thank you very much to Mikael for coming on the show, giving me his time. Super cool guy. Really enjoyed the conversation. And hopefully he'll come back nearer the time that his new record is due for release. My apologies if the audio was a little screwy. I think there were some feedback issues on Mikael's side. But sometimes these things can't be avoided. So hopefully it didn't ruin the experience. But as I said, if you have not yet checked out Vredensdal, if you're a fan of the show, there's a very, very good chance that you are going to think that the Tyrant Shade is the bee's knees sucking on the dog's bollocks. Speaking of which, the new Wode record is out. It's called Burn in Many Mirrors. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. It is available right now on $20 Spin. It's the sequel to Servants of the Countercosmos that came out in 2017. Wode have been spoken of for a while now in the as being in the upper echelons of the UK black metal scene. The UK black metal scene, in and of itself, as I've said many times, is experiencing a real renaissance at the moment with bands like Crimson Throne, Abduction, etc. And when you listen to Burn in Many Mirrors, you will very quickly understand why they are, or why Wode is included in those conversations about the UK's black metal elite. In some ways, this is their most ambitious and their most sprawling record ever, just in terms of the number of influences that they pull in. There are some very knowing nods to old school death metal in here, to new wave of British heavy metal melodies. There's even a couple of, and I dare say it, considering how many snide comments I've made about Iron Maiden, but there's a couple of bits that wouldn't be entirely out of place on an Iron Maiden record. But it stands to these gentlemen's abilities as musicians and songwriters that this is probably the most focused and the most razor-sharp record that Wode have ever done. In spite of the fact that they're probably more creatively free, I think, than they've been on their last two records, both of which were very good. On this one, that freedom is kind of funneled into something that is bang on target from, track 1 through track 6 across the record's 40-minute runtime. I think really where it comes to a head most is in the final track, Streams of Rapture, which is a one track but kind of split into 3 parts. But this is really where it's almost like a summary of everything that they've done on the tracks prior, but just pulled together in an unbelievably skillful and engaging and mind-blowingly dexterous way. I think Burn in Many Mirrors, again, like I said, has been spoken of by people as one of the best records of the year so far. I'm certainly not surprised. I don't think you're going to be either. So if you've not yet checked it out, then make sure that you do. As I said, it's available right now on $20 Spin. Here is a track for your consumption. This is a song called Fire in the Hills. Fire in the Hills by Wode off an album called Burn in Many Mirrors, available right now on 20 bucks spin. Go check them out. Again, as ever, I will post a link to this band in the description of the podcast. So if you do go on there and you buy yourself some music or you buy yourself some merchandise, then let them know where you discovered them, and hopefully we'll get them on the show at some point. But great record, and again, as I said, not difficult to see why people are so hot on it. Speaking of hot, let's see what's hot on the press and check out some news on some of the metal sites. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was a article that I saw this morning, actually, on Metal Injection. Metallica wanted to cut Robert Trujillo's $1 million deal out of their documentary. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen Some Kind of Monster, and I have to say right from the off, I thought that Some Kind of Monster was one of the cruelest moments that I have experienced in my entire life, as I saw my childhood heroes act like complete and utter assholes. Because I feel like with hindsight, a lot of the press have kind of tried to, turn this on its head and talk about, what the band went through, and they try and make the band seem like victims in the story, when frankly they really were behaving almost to a person. I think the only guy who came off not coming across as a complete and utter dickhead on that documentary was Kirk, but the rest of them were just absolutely fucking just behaving like complete and utter spoiled brats. But the article is very interesting. So it says here, Metallica's documentary, Some Kind of Monster, is a pivotal moment in the band's career. Actually, it says pivotal, but for sure Metal Injection should start doing some proofreading. And surely the rawest they've ever been exposed on camera. At first, all that exposure didn't sit well with the band, and they wanted certain scenes cut, including the moment they offered bassist Robert Trujillo the spot in the band for a $1 million advance signing fee. I mean, I don't know who they think they're fooling, as far as that's concerned. It's the most people that listen to Metallica, I'd say, and by most I mean 99%, surely know that if you in the band, you're going to be pretty well off. I looked at the net wealth that Lars and James both have, and I think in both cases it's north of $200 million. So, I mean, these guys aren't poor, and if, Rob is going to join the band, surely he's going to get a little sweetener when he joins. Side note as well, I do feel like this band, from a live perspective, lost so much when Jason Newsted left the band, because if I watch any of those older videos, from the Justice for All tours, or even the tours that they did for the Black Album, Jason had a presence on stage and a badassness on stage that I just loved. And Rob, as much as he's a great bass player, and in my opinion probably technically a better bass player than Jason, it's just not the same. He's some surfer dude who, is a cool guy and a great dude to have in a band like maybe, Suicidal Tendencies, but not Metallica. But anyway, that's a side note. Let's carry on. So it turns out when the directors screened the movie for Metallica and their management for the first time, the band had some hesitations. Joe Berlinger, the movie's co-director and co-producer, tells the Greatest Music of All Time podcast about the awkward meeting the band and producers had after the first screening. Basically, he talks here about how, the band wanted certain bits cut out. They weren't comfortable with everything that was included in the documentary. I think at one point there was even talk of the documentary being shelved. They compare it here to a documentary that was filmed on the Rolling Stones back in 1972 that was shelved and never came out. I shan't mention the name of the documentary, but you can see it on the screen here. If I mention it, I'm sure the woke will descend upon me and have me cancelled. But so I think that, one thing I will say where I do respect the band here is they would have looked at this, and I think deep down, part of the reason they didn't want this stuff coming out is because they knew that they were coming across like complete and utter assholes. But, fair play to them that they still actually let the documentary be released. And the fact that, it appears that James was the guy, in my opinion, the man who came off worst out of this documentary, who then turned around and said, it's painful to watch, but you guys did exactly what you said you would do. It's an honest, raw, truthful portrait of what we went through. So yeah, I hats off to James for saying this was us, during a point in time, and still releasing the documentary. But again, from my perspective, I hated every second of it. It was the most uncomfortable watch ever. And for somebody who loved James Hetfield as much as I did growing up, it was horrible to see. And I will also say, I've mentioned this before, I hope that James is in a good place now. I know that he had another relapse when it came to his problems with alcohol recently. I do hope that he's in a better place, and that he's sober, and that he's feeling mentally and physically healthy. But he has not been the same after this whole incident. I remember a James off of Binge and Purge who was shouting profanity at the audience, and just strutting around the stage like a pro wrestler, swilling beer. There was such an aggression and an excitement to that band on stage, and I remember seeing them back in 2004, 2005. And, the best James could come up with for, mid-song banter was, "Hey, everyone, enjoy it. Enjoy the metal moment. What's up, my friends?" It just doesn't do it for me. I saw them again at Twickenham Stadium probably about 3-4 years ago. I think it is about 3-4 years ago now, and it was the same. Grossly disappointing. And it's just not the same band that I knew and loved from my youth. But anyway, like I said, interesting. I thought it was an interesting story. This one I thought was interesting too. Marco from Stellar Master Elite put this on my radar also. Corey Taylor apparently wrote a gonzo horror comedy, Zombie versus Ninja, that he hopes to shoot this year. I think the quote was, "I don't want to win any Oscars. I just want to make cool cult movies." I don't think that there has ever been a danger of Corey winning an Oscar for anything, even though, if we're honest, the Oscars aren't worth shit anymore either. I mean, there was a time 20 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, when I used to get so excited about Oscar season because there would be so many good movies coming out. I remember in one year, there was Traffic, Almost Famous. I'm trying to think what else came out that year. I mean, it was always like at least 3 or 4 of the movies that were in the nominations for Best Picture of the year. There was always at least a handful that were essential viewing, and There Will Be Blood being one of them in back in 2007. I think that year was There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men, both of which are fantastic. But anyway, again, I digress. I think Zombie versus Ninja. I cannot imagine what a complete pile of fucking poo this will be. Like right on a par with the Glenn Danzig mishaps. The other thing that I'll also say, again, as a side note, gonzo horror comedy. I don't want comedy mixed in with horror. I feel like I know that it's some people's bag. It's just not mine. I don't find anything funny about people being killed. And frankly, as much as I love horror, I feel like when you add comedic elements to it, that's not anything other than extraordinarily subtle, it just becomes like, Child's Play or, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 or something like that. That's kind of falls into that so bad it's funny category. But, those movies are also anchored by interesting characters as opposed to, and when I say interesting characters, I mean, entertaining characters like Freddy and Chucky. But they kind of carry those through. And maybe also I watch those with, rose-tinted glasses because, I watched those when I was a kid. But I feel like for, I don't know, a grown man to make a movie like Zombie versus Ninja, maybe I'm just an old asshole, but I think it sounds like a fucking dumbass idea, and I'm sure the movie will suck. What else is on Metal Injection? CBD oil can help artists produce better music. Apparently that's what passes for a think piece. And then everybody would have seen Metal Archives replaced every band photo with a cat photo. That was pretty amusing. And I saw that my friend Mike from Tombs is playing straight into that with a new t-shirt that's being released, which looks very cool. And I do want to get myself some Tombs merchandise at some point, so maybe I'll add that to the list. Let's move on to Blabbermouth. Dave Mustaine says he has only one more song left to sing on upcoming Megadeth album. Yay. Serge Tankian refuses to shut up about politics. Yeah, you can say whatever he wants. I'm so fucking over talking about politics. I've gotten to a point where I barely even watch the news anymore because I feel like there was a time when it might have meant something, but everything I'm seeing now just suggests to me that the time for turning the ship around is well and truly over. And frankly, since nobody can do anything about what's going on in the world right now, I just choose to focus on things that I find enjoyable and that I find interesting. And I frankly get more out of watching barbecue videos, which is what I spend a big chunk of my YouTube time doing, over watching news. At least not as much as I used to. This was an interesting one, and again is probably not completely outside of what I've spoken about with a fair few guests recently. Dimmu Borgir, Cradle of Filth drummer Nick Barker on current death metal scene. It's become almost soulless. So let's check what he has to say. Legendary extreme metal drummer Nick Barker of Lockup, Brujeria, Dimmu Borgir and Cradle of Filth. He's actually not in Lockup anymore. He is in Brujeria as far as I know. Dimmu Borgir, he's not in, I don't believe he's in Cradle of Filth either. But anyway, was asked in a new interview with Islands Overdrive for his opinion on the current state of the extreme music scene, and he responded, "I think it's become slightly oversaturated, especially death metal. There's an element where it's all beginning to sound the same. 30 years ago, it was all about riffs, and now 30 years later, it's all about how fast the BPM is on the track. It's not about the riffs anymore, it's about the typewriter." Like I said, I've spoken about it many times. I do agree with him to probably about 90%, because there are exceptions. Ageless Oblivion, who I mentioned at the top of the show, and who I will have on the show at some point soon, they're very cool. And there still are some good death metal bands coming out. And I feel like death metal has really kind of gone where death metal has evolved to is more in the direction of bands like Ulcerate. At least the death metal that I'm interested in. I mean, there's a ton of bands that do the gore thing and that do stuff that I find just dull as fuck. But there's also Werewolves, and there's Ulcerate, as I said, and there's the band I spoke about last week, Blindfolded and Led to the Woods, and those are all fucking excellent. And then one thing that I do find a little ironic here, so it mentions later on in the article, Barker announced the launch of a new UK hardcore band called Borstal earlier this year. The group, which also features Pierre Mendeville of Knuckledust and members of Dripback and King of Pigs, released its debut EP titled At Her Majesty's Pleasure. I don't mind hardcore. There's actually some hardcore bands that I like a lot, and it's my workout soundtrack of choice. But at the same time, I don't think you can be saying death metal sounds the same, but you're in a hardcore band, because let's be honest. Again, with precious few exceptions, most newer hardcore all sounds exactly the same, and I think much more so than death metal. I mean, at least some death metal bands still have a kind of there's like a uniqueness about how they present themselves, and they don't all do the same shit on stage. But I mean, hardcore to me. Hardcore in 2021, or actually say 2018 or 2019, it's not like the scene that used to thrive in the in the early and mid 90s, where you had these bands that all sounded distinct, and the audience was really mixed. I feel like everything that I've ever seen, every show I've ever been to, everyone does the same shit. They all look the same. Everybody has the same moves on stage. And every single, especially nowadays, every single song, or every album has to have at least one song that's anti-police, and I don't know. I do think there's a bit of a disconnect there. But I will say this about At Her Majesty's Pleasure: Barker's drumming still sounds just as fucking outstanding as it always has. I always find it funny how a lot of people hate on his drumming, and to a person, not one of them is themselves a drummer. And it's a lot like people that hate on certain singers or certain guitarists, and they themselves can't do anything even close to that. But there's a lot of people say that say or speak ill of Nick's drumming ability, and that's just nuts. He is incredible, and there's no two ways about it. Next story, Napalm Death signs new deal with Century Media Records. I mean, Century Media, as far as the label is concerned, they were one of my favorite labels for a long time. There were also, when I was working for Chronicles of Chaos, they had a lady by the name of Donna who used to run PR, and she was excellent. And, she actually made it fun to work with Century Media. So if you ever look up any of those old reviews that I did or interviews that I did, there was a strong bias towards Century Media bands. But nowadays you can't get shit done with them because the people that run their PR here in the UK are a bunch of fucking dickheads. But that aside, the best part of that article to me is that if Napalm Death have signed a new deal, it means they're making new music. And I'm very happy about that. I fucking loved the last Napalm Death album, just as I loved the previous 8 or 9. I don't actually think there's anything that Napalm Death put out after Fear, Emptiness, Despair that I didn't like, and that includes the mid-90s stuff that got a lot of hate. I think there is some gold on those albums. There's maybe 1 or 2 songs that aren't all that great, but I mean, I would challenge anybody to go back and listen to those records, including Diatribes, and not tell me that some of those songs not only fucking smoke, but have stood the test of time. Let's go on. I know there was Fear Factory to release first new song in over 5 years this month. I'm sure that's going to sound like total muck. I really have 2 Fear Factory records that I like, Demanufacture and Sword of the New Machine. Both are probably for sentimental reasons as much as anything else. But I always, when a band's kind of career descends into the soap opera that has become Fear Factory over the last couple of years, it puts me off listening to them altogether. It's what, frankly, put me off listening to Metallica for a long time as well, after I saw Some Kind of Monster. At the Gates announced new album, The Nightmare of Being. I am very excited about this. At the Gates for me is a bit weird, though, because I know a lot of people, see Slaughter of the Soul as, their absolute peak. And I understand why they say that, because, from the perspective of how much it influenced the rest of the scene and how much, how many other bands kind of drew inspiration from that, I completely get it. But for me, At the Gates have really been at their best since coming back. I thought At War with Reality was fantastic. And I thought that To Drink from the Night itself was, in my opinion, it's my favorite At the Gates album by far. I know a lot of people disagree on that, and they will go towards The Red Sky Is Ours or Slaughter of the Soul or whatever the case may be. But I love the direction in which this band has been going, and I think it suits them really well. I think some of the darker elements that they've added into their music, I think is superb. So the comment here is, At the Gates vocalist Thomas Lindberg checked in with the following comment about the album's concept. The overall theme deals with the topic of pessimism, and I have been diving deep down in pessimistic philosophers. Trying to understand this way of looking at the world, it is not a negative album, more a gateway into new ideas for me personally, trying out different perspectives. You could call the album an introduction to pessimism as a concept, I guess. It's a very dark album, but not negative. And musically, while The Nightmare of Being unveils a newly liberated and adventurous At the Gates via some of the bravest and most mesmerizing material they have ever written, Lindbergh adds, it still sounds like At the Gates 100%. It's just more of everything. So I don't know what they're alluding to there, but what I would definitely say is, if they are going to kind of keep going down the track that they did with To Drink of the Night itself, I will be a very happy man, because I thought that album was superb. Let's see what else there is. Metallic Poo, Iced Earth guitarist John Shaver's next court date hearing is set for April 6th. Alex Webster says it's killer to see former Cannibal Corpse members Chris Barnes and Jack Owen playing together again. Not going to talk about that in any great detail, but I can say maybe it's killer because of how fucking terrible it sounds, and you're looking at it going, you two are nothing without Cannibal Corpse, or you're nothing without me. I tried listening to that Cannibal Corpse record again. I had a couple of people come back and say, if you give it a chance, it's not so bad. I gave it a chance, it's even worse. It's a fucking disgrace to the legacy of Chris and Jack as figures in the scene. I still do not understand how a record label could put out that crap, and then at the same time there are phenomenal bands like Blindfolded and Led to the Woods, Master's Call, Stellar Master Elite, Feral Light, and the list goes on, who are without a label. I know, part of me knows, don't get me wrong, because I know, the comment will be, yeah, but they've got a legacy, they've got a guaranteed, probably a guaranteed bottom end as far as how much they're going to sell. But I don't give a fuck. If you're in this game for, with any degree of artistic integrity, to put out that shit, I don't know what the hell is going on with Metal Blade, or why they would think to do something like that. And looks like there's nothing else on here, so let's see if there's anything on Metal Storm as we close off. Exhumed have started recording their new full length. Hurrah! Exhumed are, again, they're one of those bands that just have not, for many years now, done all that much for me. And I'll tell you what hasn't done all that much for me either. The absolute shambles that is the Metal Storm fucking bullshit website. Whoever is hosting this mess needs to get their act together. I mean, just look at this. And it's not like, the pornography has, stopped me from being able to look at websites properly, but good God. Anyway, there's nothing else really on here that looks to be of any interest anyway, so I am going to draw a line under this week's installment of the news, and I am going to make like a tree and scram. And if you don't know the movie that I'm referring to there, then you are a disgrace to yourself and to your family. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning into the podcast. Once again, I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Next week, Jesse Mathewson of Ken Mode is on the show. That's going to be a great one. I fucking love Ken Mode. I know it's not black metal or death metal or, uber cult, but I don't give a shit. It's my podcast. I'll have on whom I want, and Jesse Mathewson is a bad motherfucker from an awesome band, and I'm pretty confident you guys are going to thoroughly enjoy that conversation. But any hoot, I hope that, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that wherever you are, whatever it is you're doing, you're keeping safe, healthy, and well. It is Saturday, 1:29. I'm going to go spice up some pork steaks and some chicken. I'm going to get the smoker going. I'm going to enjoy my Easter weekend. I've been working myself half to death over the last couple of weeks. So, the next couple of days, just being able to chill out is a fucking godsend or a devil's send. But take care of yourselves. See you all next week from the mean streets of Great Shefford. I'm wishing all of you bad motherfuckers a fond farewell.